Bill Janeway, who's talking here tonight, is a unique figure who's been a very successful venture capitalist, investing in many of the great successes of Silicon Valley. He's an economist, a historian, and part of INET, working with George Soros and others to really reinvent economics and deal with all the problems that led to the crash of the last decade. And he's going to be talking tonight about the relationship between finance, business, and government, and how do we generate more money to power innovation, ideas, technologies, and in turn power future economic growth.
To be able to recognize investment opportunities requires an enormous investment by yourself in understanding the context, the technological context, the market context, and having the experience of being able to read entrepreneurs who are programmed to promise more than can reasonably be expected to deliver, but who, when they intersect, and with some track record, often a track record that includes failure and learning by failing, and have identified the intersection of new technologies with emergent markets, that's when it's time to get excited.
80% plus, year in, year out, of all dollars invested by venture capitalists in the United States have been invested in only two sectors: information and communications technology and biotechnology, life sciences. It is not statistically demonstrable, but I don't know anybody in the business who doesn't believe that more than 100% of all the profits have been made in those two sectors, which happen to be the sectors where the government, the state, has invested hundreds of billions of dollars over decades in funding research, technological invention, and serving as an early customer for technologies not yet ready for commercial prime time, pulling the private sector into the new economy.
I think of it as the processes through which technological innovation have driven economic growth and development over the past 250 years. The economy that escaped from the Malthusian trap, where every increase in productivity was chewed up, literally, by increased population.
Why has the biotechnology industry in the US come to reside in Boston, San Francisco, Seattle, and San Diego, and nowhere else? There's clearly a story about sponsorship from core institutions that produce both intellectual property and human capital. There's a bubble that can mobilize capital in a very wasteful process, but from which some great companies can emerge that would not have emerged without the bubble.
Today, we're at a time when we've spent a generation making the state illegitimate as an economic actor. And on the other hand, we are still recovering from the, let us say, extreme excesses of financial speculation that culminated in the great credit crisis of 2008. And without those institutions in support of innovation, of investments whose future returns cannot be estimated with any degree of precision, innovation is stalled.
Cisco is kind of the poster child for growth through acquisition of innovation. They estimate that probably something more than 40% of their acquisitions have, quote, worked. And they're very proud of that.
I believe very strongly that it has to begin with recognizing that there can be productive roles, productive functions for government, for state institutions in supporting all of the elements of innovation, from research and scientific discovery through technological trials and deployment, and of course, particularly through education. That's one side. The other is a longer-term environment where high employment, high growth is supported by, again, government investments, which in turn mean that more new projects will be funded, more risky investments will be made, on the one hand, and on the other, as the processes of creative destruction unroll, those who are stranded in obsolete industries will be reemployed productively much more rapidly in the context of a high-growth, full employment economy.